4 more chapters. There's 14. 9 through 11 seem to be one set, 12 through 14 another set. And I hope to get through 11. I didn't have enough dig time. Susan's looking for a good seat. she's not looking for a good seat. She's just checking in. All right, good morning. Welcome back to Sunday morning. We're going to continue our study of the Kingdom in Exile, the Kingdom of Christ. We're in Zechariah 10. This is an aside from Ezra, is where we were. So we went to Ezra, to Haggai, to Zechariah, and in a couple weeks we'll go back to Ezra and kind of pick up where we're at. I'm going to go change up. I'll probably get through quicker. If it doesn't, it might have a dead battery. So today's special thing is not only the premium Hershey Nuggets candy bars, but they've been stolen back from a thief. They were in my box and somebody thieved them and moved. I don't know who would be pilfering things out of my box. Had stuff like that happen before, but they were pilfered and moved, but they have been recovered. So they're extra sweet on that account. So.
They mean you're melted?
Hopefully not. They were here in the building. They were just moved. So, the Bible Project, I pointed towards this before. This is a little snippet out of one of their slides in their video, but It says, reading Zechariah is a wild ride. It's non-linear. It's got a non-linear flow of thought. It's got startling imagery. I just like the image, so I put it up there. Life doesn't fit into neat, orderly patterns, and we're invited to look above the chaos and hope for the coming of God's kingdom. And really, that's the key to what we're looking at. As we worked our way through the visions and stuff like that, there was some weird stuff. Chuck and I have talked about the fact you could follow some of those symbols, you could follow it all the way through the Bible, front to back, and just have its own study on even some of that kind of thing. The temple itself is a study that could be done between the tabernacle, the temple, the second temple, the temple that Jesus was in, the temple of his body. You could do some studies like that. So I thought it was a fair representation of Zechariah. I'm getting used to having bifocals again, so bear with me as I trip and fall and try to read stuff here. So, anyways, I got some stuff from Kaufman to kind of outline where we're at today. Whereas the first 8 chapters feature the concerns relative to the building of the physical temple, without at all leaving out of sight the far more important matter, the ultimate building of the true temple, the church, or the kingdom of Christ. At this point in Zechariah, the emphasis shifts almost totally to the true temple to be set up on the first advent of the Messiah. In other words, when we were in Ezra, they started building the temple and they stopped. Went to Haggai, and Haggai says, you need to get busy. Zechariah says, well, God's taking stuff out of the way for you to get busy. Go back and build a temple. From here on, it doesn't talk about that physical temple, that physical second temple. It talks about the building of the church. The coming of the Messiah is what the last 4 chapters, 5 chapters, 9 through 14, 6 chapters, I guess, whatever it is. So the last 6 chapters talk about really the Messiah. It seems wise to build one's interpretation of these chapters around the passages that are quoted by Jesus and the New Testament writers. That comes from Homer Haley, his commentary on the Minor Prophets. For those who have the premillennial thought, there is a thought out there that some people believe that Jesus will come again. He will be king for 1,000 years, and then he will go back to heaven. That is not what we teach. That is not what we believe. It is not what we believe that the Bible says. We are considered amillennial. We are in the 1,000 years now. Jesus came. He is Lord. He is Christ. He is King. We've all said that. If you've been baptized, you've said that. He is King. At the end of time, he will take what's his and go back home. And the rest will be destroyed. And that's what the Bible teaches. So anyways, these 2 schools of thought, you can find a lot of stuff on the premillennial thought. And some of this imagery you can look at thinking that the kingdom of Israel will rebuild on earth. But if you're amillennial thought, a lot of it combats that thought. So my problem with some of this is, just give me what I need. Give me what I need to teach. So some of that might be statements. Some of it won't. Some will lead to discussion. Some won't. So that's kind of where we're at anyways. Scholars generally place these chapters, Zechariah 9 through 14, at a later period in the prophet's life. So you had the early ones, the 6 visions happened, all 8 visions happened in one night. This happens again later in his life. So, and if you really want to get into it, you can find people that will tear everything down. It's always weird to me that you see things that theologists say, and theologists sometimes apparently don't believe in God, because most of what they have to do is tears down what's cohesive, what's unified. So that's not what we see. So anyways, we're going to pick up in Zechariah 9. The 3 sections of Zechariah 9, you probably already, if you got your Bible open, the 3 headings are basically the same kind of thing. Judgment on Israel's enemies, the coming king of Zion, and the Lord will save his people. Those are the 3 sections of Zechariah 9. So we'll pick up on verse 1, and we'll see where we can go from there. Zechariah 1, the oracle of the word of the Lord is against the land of Hadrach, and Damascus in its resting place. For the Lord has an eye on mankind and all the tribes of Israel. Whose words are these? The Lord. There you go. Well, I guess I should have asked ahead of time. Is anybody allergic to nuts? If you are, pass them on to a friend. Don't eat these. They probably got nuts in them, okay? If you're allergic to nuts, afraid of nuts, or you're just plain nuts, don't eat these. So, otherwise, they should be good. Like I said, make friends, make enemies, whatever. I'll pass it out. Some translations use the burden of the word of the Lord. That's what it says in their text, instead of oracle. The Hebrew word is masa, masal, and it literally means load. A lot of times when it's used in the Bible, it means a load that's carried. So how would this definition, if you use the word burden instead of oracle, how would it read different? The burden of the word of the Lord is against the land of Hadrach and Damascus in its resting place, and the Lord has an eye on mankind. What's that?
He knows everything that's going on.
Well, he knows everything. Oracle usually means, we know oracle is prophecy, and a lot of times we see that as that's a good thing. But sometimes, we have blessings and we have curses, so it's all like oracle. So the opposite is, this is a load. This is some bad news that's kind of come in here. They're going to come on the people of Damascus and Hadrach. So it's a burden. It's a heavy load. Steve hates it when I walk around because he can't catch me with the cameras. So we're going to need a map. I'm going to use a map, then I'm going to tell you you don't need a map. So that's how I work. So, Hadrach means enclosed, and it's symbolic of Syria. That's what I know of Hadrach. It's symbolic of Syria. You might know where Syria is relative to Israel? North. Chuck got that one. Chuck didn't need a map. So what I have a map that doesn't have Syria on it. So. All right. So this is a map of Palestine, 520 BC. So this is a map at the time of Zechariah. Traditionally, Israel kind of comes down to a point right here and up, across there. So what would be Galilee, Samaria, Judea, Dor, and Ashdod. I think a little bit across the Jordan into Gilead, Ammon. Some of that's Israel. So that's typically what we consider Israel. These are some of the surrounding areas at the time, but we know that they've been gone. The boundaries in the sand shift when they're gone for 70 years. So it shifts a little bit. Syria is typically Damascus, up in that area. Damascus is still in Syria. I got another map. Here, let's go with this one. This map, so you got Babylonia, Assyria. Syria goes from Aleppo. I know Aleppo is part of Syria, Hamath, Damascus. So Syria is kind of that section right there. If you're at home watching, you don't get to see my pointer. Go to CNN.com, figure out a map, because Syria is still on the map today. So, anyways, what does that matter? Like I said, I got a map just because, but it also you won't need a map. Clicking is going to be a challenge today. When all civilized man at that time, as well as all the tribes of Israel, were fastening their gaze intently upon Alexander the Great, his phenomenal conquest, they were actually fastening their eyes upon the Lord, for Alexander was simply God's servant of judgment and chastisement. That comes from Merrill Unger in his commentary on Zechariah. So we have talked about Alexander the Great in this class before, right? Class number 1 of this series. We actually talked about Alexander the Great. So we had the statue. The statue had the order of kingdoms. And the first kingdom at that time would have been what? Huh? It had a second kingdom came after Babylon. Huh? Medo-Persians? Good job, Mickey. All right. Medo-Persians were the second kingdom. And there was a kingdom after the Medo-Persians.
It's all Greek to me.
It's all Greek to Chuck. Empire. And the Medo-Persians, they're kind of combined. Medo-Persians are the green. Don't separate them, because then everything kind of works out weird. Some people try to do that. The green is the Medo-Persian Empire. This will be conquered by Alexander the Great. We saw that with Nebuchadnezzar's statue. We saw that with the handwriting on the wall. No, not the handwriting on the wall. The goat, yeah, with the horns.
Yeah, the single one big horn.
Yeah.
Out of the goat.
Out of the goat, yeah. So Alexander the Great has been prophesied. We see him in Daniel. We see him here. I guess the story is even that once Alexander got to Jerusalem, he worshiped at the temple, and he brought tribute to the temple, let me put it that way. And they showed him where he was prophesied that God said he was coming. So I think I got some notes on that he basically spared Israel because of that. anyways. And on Hamath also, which borders on it, Tyre and Sidon, which are, though they were very wise. Tyre was built herself a rampart and heaped up silver like dust, and fine gold like the mud of the streets. So there's more weight on the Medo-Persian Empire, is really what it was. This whole thing is going to come down on them. Tyre was a stronghold. Tyre and Sidon, basically on the Mediterranean at the north end of Israel. That is Lebanon today, right? Tyre and Sidon are Lebanon, I believe. And you see those a lot through the Bible. I think it's just symbolic of pagans in general. Yeah, it's where the cedars came for Solomon's temple. And I understand there are no cedar trees left in Lebanon today other than on the flag. So that's my understanding. That may or may not be true, but that's my understanding. In verse 4, but behold, the Lord will strip her of her possessions and strike down her power on the sea, and she shall be devoured by fire. Tyre was a stronghold until Alexander the Great got there. He destroyed the city, and he took the rubble from the city, and he built a big seawall. He built a big jetty. The commentary I read used the word mole. I had never seen the word mole used to describe basically a jetty. 200 foot wide. He went out there and built this jetty. So basically, he took Tyre, the city of Tyre, and cast it into the sea. That's basically what Alexander the Great did. He also executed 10,000 citizens and enslaved about 30,000 more. So that's what he did when he got to Tyre. Verse 5, Ashkelon shall see it and be afraid. Gaza too, and shall writhe in anguish. Ekron too, also its hopes are confounded. King shall perish from Gaza. Ashkelon shall be uninhabited. Coppin said that the campaign of Alexander the Great in subduing all the portion of the Medo-Persian Empire precisely fulfilled all the prophecies here against the various cities mentioned. So this prophecy says Alexander the Great's coming. He's going to do this damage. He did. Verse 9:6, a mixed people shall dwell in Ashdod, and I will cut off the pride of Philistia. How would the people of God interpret a mixed people? And how would they interpret the pride of the Philistines or pride of Philistia? Well, we'll start with one. How would Jews, how would the people of God interpret a mixed people? Mixed up with non-Jews. The race is no longer pure. The pagans, the Gentiles have mixed in the bloodline, and they're right there.
Mine says a strange people.
A strange people. You know? And I like the fact we use multiple versions because it gives us more than one side of the view, right? So a strange people, you take that and you mix it in with a mixed people. So how strange would be those who didn't know God, right? They might have weird customs. What kind of customs did the pagans have to worship? Most of us don't want to talk about it, right? I still go back to the fact we ought to have R-rated church sometimes. Steve doesn't believe that. Well, yeah, they do some stuff that we just don't even want to talk about. Strange, odd, weird. Have you ever worshipped at a different kind of church? It seems strange.
They weren't just strange, they were totally repulsive, the things they did to God.
Yeah, they were totally repulsive. They were strange. They didn't know. They were strangers. How about that? Is that a good word? You mix that together, you just kind of see it. But they mix together. So dad might be a pagan, mom might be a Jew. The kids are mixed and strange. They, what did they learn? What did they pick up? Where did they go from there? It's hard to tell. What the pride of Philistia, the pride of the Philistines.
So for them to have pride against them would be terrible.
Philistines were always the enemies of Israel. Always. Since they moved into Canaan, they were enemies. They stayed enemies because they didn't wipe them out. One of the pride of Philistia was they had their own gods. They had their own pagans. So it's kind of against that. Mixed people shall dwell in Ashdod. I'll cut off the pride of Philistia. I'll put the map back there. Ashdod's over on the Med again. Philistia is right there. Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod. That's Philistine. It's right there.
In their flesh, to have the Philistines have a pride, have something on them.
Yeah, it'd be a thorn in the flesh. And this is kind of where he's coming to, is he's pointing to that God says, I'm putting some weight on them as we go into the Messianic kingdom. That's actually going to go away. It doesn't really go away. It's just not part of God's kingdom. Chuck?
They made sure it was Greek culture. They didn't accept any other culture but Greek. So you had to accept the Greek gods. Greek gods didn't have worship like it was for the other pagan gods. The other pagan gods required human sacrifice and like that. I don't think any of the Greek gods required any of that stuff.
Yeah, I don't think the Greeks required human sacrifice and stuff like that either. I think you're right. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the pagans, it's blood in some form or fashion. I don't know that the Greeks or even the Romans really did that. I might,
But they were pagan, but they didn't follow along the lines with Molech and some of the other gods that they had in this region.
Yeah, they came along with a different lineage. And that's, like I said, you follow our gods. You're Greek culture, you're going to be Greek culture. Verse 9-7, I'll take away its blood from its mouth, its abominations from between its teeth. The two shall be a remnant for our God. It shall be like a clan in Judah, and Ekron shall be like the Jebusites. These won't be exterminated. They're still going to be there. They're just going to be combined into Israel. And that's really what the prophecy says. Like the Jebusites when Israel moved into Canaan. They didn't kill the Jebusites. They were just there. They were the thorn in the flesh. They stayed. I think those are the ones they made a deal with. God said, don't make a deal with any of them, and they made a deal with them. But the Jebusites said, we see how you're wiping out everybody else, but hey, we don't want any part of that. We'd like to have some kind of alliance. I think that's how the people that was.
Lied to them too.
They lied?
Yeah, the Jebusites lied to them, yeah.
How's he going to make a deal? That's how it is. In verse 8, then I will encamp at my house as a guard, so that none shall march to and fro. No oppressor shall again march over them. For now I see with my own eyes. Alexander spared Jerusalem and gave the Jews special favors. That comes from R.E. Higginson. I got that quoted from Kaufman's commentary. So that's kind of where it is. They're spared. Then I will encamp in my house. Oh, sorry, I got another commentary part. Then entering Jerusalem, he offered sacrifice in the temple, heard the prophecy of Daniel about himself, and granted certain privileges to Jews throughout his kingdom, the empire. The privileges said to have been conferred were enjoyed under his successors. Alexander had a vast influence in bringing the Jews into closer relationship with the rest of Asia, and so preparing them to fulfill their ultimate destiny as Christians. So that comes from Dean's commentary, the pulpit commentary. So anyways, that's the word that I got, that Alexander treated Israel different than he did other places in some form or fashion. And verse 9, the text switches. This is switches coming to the coming king rather than the weight on the pagans. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. Righteous and having salvation is he. Humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. One of the things we talked about earlier was the fact that although some people use this as premillennial, the best way to look at this is, what do you see carried over into the New Testament? What do you see carried over in the New Testament that shows the coming of the Messiah, that finishes out this prophecy? So what do you see here that points to the Messiah?
Riding a donkey.
Riding a donkey. Riding a donkey is definitely something that points to a Messiah. Got anything else? He is salvation. You're right. Salvation is he. Righteous and having salvation is he. Let's quote it again where? It is. Prophecy quoted in all four Gospels. There you go. In some form or fashion, it's quoted in Matthew 21, 1 through 5, Mark 11, 1 through 10, Luke 19, 29 through 38, and John 12 through 12, 19. He rode in a donkey, and that was on a donkey, and they sent him. Didn't they send somebody to go get a donkey? Tell those people, the Lord needs this donkey. Because it was already prophesied right here. It was a colt of a donkey. It wasn't just a donkey. It was a colt of a donkey. I would imagine those are a little harder to find. Well, they should be, right? So,
View of what a donkey is kind of low, but actually the donkeys were prized. They were kind of big and nicer and everything. So the colt would be a nice animal.
so colt would be more the size to ride rather than. Yeah. More of a regal thing, huh? That's it could be. That's all right. That's okay. Chuck and I were talking about there's certain things that you could do entire lesson or entire study, and donkeys itself would be something that could be a whole study on donkeys. It's as weird as it might sound, they thread all the way through. Verse 10, I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim and the war horse from Jerusalem, and the battle bow shall be cut off, and he shall speak peace to the nations. His rule shall be from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. So what are the borders of Messiah's kingdom? We had Syria being closed in. We had the map of the Medo-Persians. We know even Alexander's. What are the borders of the Messianic kingdom, Christ's kingdom? Everywhere. No borders. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? It can get into Philistine. It can get into Syria. It can get into places that we would never, ever think about it getting there. It's 11 and 12, as for you also, because of the blood of my covenant with you, I will set your prisoners free from the waterless pit. Return to your stronghold, O prisoners of hope. Today I declare that I will restore you to you double. Set your prisoners free is mentioned in Jesus' first sermon. This is the first time he speaks. Luke 4, well, first time he has a sermon was Luke 4:18. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has appointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed. What do you think the waterless pit is that imprisons these people?
Sin.
Sin is the waterless pit. No matter how deep you dig it, it doesn't have to have water. Who are the prisoners of hope?
Are we?
Us. Us.
We
Yeah.
are.
We're waiting, right? Hope is. Till it comes to fulfillment. Verse 13, where I have bent Judah as my bow. I have made Ephraim its arrow. I will stir up your sons, O Zion, against your sons, O Greece, and wield you like a warrior's sword. You didn't expect to find the word Greece actually there, did you? I didn't. I was surprised when I actually saw the word Greece in there. Verse 14, and the Lord will appear over them, and his arrow will go forth like lightning, and the Lord God will sound the trumpet and will march forth in the whirlwinds of the south. Here the text turns toward the victory of God's people spiritually. So we know the king's coming. This is the victory. The Lord of hosts will protect them, and they shall devour and tread among down the sling stones, and they shall drink and roar as if drunk with wine, and be full like a bowl, drenched like the corners of the altar. On that day, the Lord their God will save them as the flock of his people. For like the jewels of a crown, it will shine on his land. For how great it is his goodness, how great his beauty. Grain shall make the young men flourish, and new wine the young women.
Even in Jeremiah or any of those, when he was proclaiming doom for them right then, he always had a promise for future. And so here it starts out in 9 with doom and ends up with the greatest promise of all.
Yep, it starts out with doom and it goes into the greatest promise of all. You're right. It's a common thing with the prophecies. You see that in a lot of Psalms too. You can almost...
It ends up saying, I trust in you to take care of it.
Yeah, David had a lot of that kind of stuff. This is the woes that I'm going through. This is some of the hard... It might go up, down, it might go down to up to down. But you can feel David. All right, so moving on to verse 10, chapter 10. The restoration for Judah and Israel. C.F. Keel titles this section The Complete Redemption of the People of God. And Clinton R. Gill calls it Zion Triumphant Through the Messiah. However you want to call it, same thing. So, anyways, I like those titles better than the restoration of Judah and Israel because it points towards the Messiah's kingdom. It doesn't point towards a earthly kingdom that some people fall in the trap of. So, anyways, chapter 10, verse 1 and 2. Ask rain from the Lord in the season of the spring rain, from the Lord who makes the storm clouds. He will give them showers of rain to everyone, the vegetation in the field. For the household gods utter nonsense, and diviners see lies. They tell false dreams, give empty consolation. Therefore the people wander like sheep. They are afflicted for lack of a shepherd. What's the apostasy of Israel? What's got them into the problems that they've had? Household gods. Household gods. Where did we see the first household gods? Do you know where we first see household gods?
Egypt.
Egypt has household gods, yeah. So I get this to you without hitting Bob in the head.
When Abraham came from Ur,
Yeah, when Abraham came from Ur, they go on their journey and they go up to Hebron. Is it Hebron? They go up and then they go north and they go south. And say it again, I'm a long ways ahead.
I
80 feet.
said, isn't that a problem now, that people always want something else? They will not accept just the simple gospel.
Yeah, they always want something else. What we have is never enough for people. There's places that feel more. It's important, and they'll put away everything else for that. It'll be something else. After that, it'll be something new, something. Verse 4, from him shall come the cornerstone, from him the tent peg, from him the battle bow, from him every ruler, all of them also. What references to the Messiah do you see here?
Cornerstone.
The cornerstone. We can never miss the cornerstone. 1 Peter 2, 3 through 8, and I also put the next one there too, sorry. For him from every ruler. For him every ruler. That's in John 19:11. You can see that. Jesus answered him, he's talking to Pilate, you would have no authority over me at all unless it had been given to you from above. Therefore he who delivered me over to you is greater sin. So you can see both of these in there. The cornerstone's a good one. We've been on Wednesday nights, a couple weeks ago, I think we saw a lot of the rock showed up. You had rock in your Sunday morning lesson last week too, didn't you?
Yeah, I brought it back to the statue where the stone that came in and broke everything.
The stone that broke everything.
Yeah.
And I know John Fisher's always looking for new ideas. I was going to tell him rock, paper, scissors ought to be an idea. But you can follow the line of the rock, but even paper, looking at the Old Testament and the covenants with that. The Lord is with them, and they shall put to shame the riders on horses. How will God's people fare in spiritual battles? How will Christians fare in spiritual battles? I shouldn't have said God's people, because quite honestly, today, in the day of the Messianic kingdom, the day of the Messiah, believe it or not, we win.
It says the Lord always wins the battle.
He always wins, right?
That's what he tried to teach in the Old Testament.
Try to teach that. He's all like we are today, right? I'm losing right now, I give up. But he wins. It was something I taught the kids long ago when they'd watch like a movie or something. I said, good always triumphs over evil. The movie will turn out that way. It's not always easy to see. Verse 6, I will strengthen the house of Judah, and I will save the house of Joseph. I will bring them back because I have compassion on them. It shall be as though I had not rejected them, for I am the Lord their God, and I will answer them. There's no promise here for recreating any secular state or providing Israel with an earthly dynasty descended from David, or of giving Israel carnal victories over their political enemies. Of course, the inherent purpose of God to preserve Israel till the birth of Messiah occurred resulted also in the necessity of God's providential protection until that was done. If I ever write my own book, I'll make sure to use so many big words that there's no way to understand what that really said. What this says is, this does not say that Israel will be a political state. This does not say that God will preserve that piece of real estate forever. That does not say that. So, I will strengthen the house of Judah. I will say the house, we just read that. All these promises speak of the salvation of souls from sin, the bringing back of the captives in sin to the fold of Jehovah. Will the Jews be excluded in that?
No, they're the ones that are going to spread it.
Not if there's a remnant.
They're included. Yeah, they were originally, like I said, they were the ones that spread the gospel, right? They were the first ones. Jews are not excluded from that.
It always said there would be a remnant.
There'll always be a remnant. There are people with Jewish bloodlines who became Christians. We see it we see it in the New Testament. It happens today. So it's just, that's not the key anymore. So don't lose that either. Then Ephraim shall become like a mighty warrior, and their hearts shall be glad as with wine. Their children shall see it and be glad, and their hearts shall rejoice in the Lord. I will whistle for them and gather them in, and I have redeemed them. And it shall be as many as they were before. I like this metaphor. I will whistle for them. The great shepherd. He just calls in the sheep, right? Chuck, wouldn't it be easy? We just whistle. That's all we got. We miss this. We just have to whistle.
We have some sheep that are hard of hearing.
Sheep that are hard of hearing. Just whistle. Just bring them on in. So, though I scattered them among the nations, yet in far countries they shall remember me. And with their children they shall live and return. I will bring them home from the land of Egypt, gather them from Assyria, and I shall bring them to the land of Gilead and to Lebanon, till there is no room for them. Egypt and Assyria refer to the slavery of sin. Those are places where God's people were enslaved. The metaphor is still there, the simile, whatever you want to call it, symbolism. It's not a physical place. That's why I said you don't need a map after you get past that. Verse 11, he shall pass through the sea of troubles and strike down the waves of the sea. All the depths of the Nile shall be dried up. The pride of Assyria shall be laid low, and the scepter of Egypt shall depart. What is our spiritual passing through the sea of troubles that separate us from our slavery to sin? What does that call? Come on, Jeff. You got this one.
He always had a path through the sea, first
Yeah.
the Red Sea.
Pass through the Red Sea.
Then the Jordan River.
The Jordan River. It's baptism. Holy cow, look at you go. I guess you can't say holy cow when we talk about pagans and idols, but
Utter nonsense.
utter nonsense, that's it. It's baptism. That's where we pass through the sea of trouble. We strike, we'll get away from the slavery. Verse 12, I will make them strong in the Lord, and they shall walk in his name, declares the Lord. In Acts 15:8 and 9, and God, who knows the heart, bore witness to them by giving them the Holy Spirit, just as he did to us. He made no distinction between us and them, having cleansed their hearts by faith. The scripture says, everyone who believes in him will not be put to shame. There is no distinction between Jew and Greek, for the same Lord is Lord of all, bestowing his riches on all who call upon him. For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. And that's really where it's going. How do we walk in the name of the Lord? Is that my last slide? Yeah, basically. How do we walk in the name? How do we walk in the Lord? That's the best. We walk with light. We walk with pride. I make them strong. And they should walk in his name. And that's the key. We don't walk with our name. We don't walk with the shame and the sin. We don't walk with that. We walk strengthened with his name.
Back on the water, being baptism, water always, he cleansed the whole earth with the flood. He used water different ways.
God has used water many, many different ways. There's a whole series of lessons on water. That's where we're at. Chuck's going to pick up next week with Zechariah 11, right? And maybe 12. Thanks for joining me this morning. Enjoy the candy or make friends either way.